Uncle, you will see what I will do to you.
A teacher slapped a student on Friday. By Sunday, he was dead. But on Tuesday, something worse came back to school. They said Wahala Grammar School in Oyo State was the most dangerous school in the state. Not because of bad roads, not because of broken classrooms, but because the students had become the ones in charge. And the teachers were the ones who were afraid. If you had never been to Wahala Grammar School, you would not believe what happened there. The moment you walked through the gate, something felt wrong. Students sat on teachers' tables with their legs crossed. Boys smoked cigarettes behind the chemistry lab like it was their father's compound. Girls painted their nails in the middle of class, while the teacher stood at the board, too afraid to say anything. The school had a principal, Mr. Adewale, a short man with round glasses and a belly that shook when he walked. He used to be brave. That was before the students pushed him against the wall in his own office and told him to his face, "Oga, if you try anything, we will make sure you go home in a body bag." After that day, Mr. Adewale stopped shouting. He stopped punishing. He started smiling at students who were clearly doing wrong, nodding his head like they were the ones paying his salary. He had seen what happened to the last teacher who tried to be a hero, Mr. Fasola, a physics teacher. He had come to Wahala Grammar School 2 years before with fire in his chest. On his first week, he confiscated a gun from a student named Blade, a JSS 3 boy with tattoos on his neck and eyes that looked like they had seen things no child should see. Blade's gang waited for Mr. Fasola after school that same day. They beat him so badly that he spent 3 weeks in the hospital. When he came back, he collected his transfer letter quietly and left without saying goodbye to anyone. After Mr. Fasola, no teacher wanted to come to Wahala Grammar School. Those who were posted there by the government begged their relatives for connections to escape. Those who had no connection came, suffered in silence, and left pieces of their dignity on the classroom floor. But what everyone in the school feared most was not Blade. It was the group they called the Council. Nobody knew exactly how many of them there were. Some said 12, some said 20, but everyone knew their leaders. 3 boys whose names alone made junior students wet their trousers. Blade, the one with the tattoos. His real name was Adewale Jr., but nobody called him that and lived comfortably. He was the son of a local government chairman, and he knew it. He brought a pistol to school every Monday like it was a textbook. Scorpion, tall, light-skinned, always wearing sunglasses inside the classroom. His mother was a businesswoman in Lagos who sent him money every week and never asked questions. He was the one who organized the bullying. Any student from a poor family who couldn't pay tribute, that was what they called the money they collected, Scorpion made sure their school life became hell. Terror, the most dangerous. He had been expelled from 2 other schools before Wahala Grammar School. His uncle was a police officer, so nothing ever stuck to him. Terror was the one who had threatened the principal. Terror was the one who smiled when he did terrible things. Together, the 3 of them ran the school like a market. Junior students brought them food from the tuck shop. Female students dated them not out of love, but out of fear. Students from poor families gave them money or suffered. Anybody who tried to report them found out very quickly that the police in that town were not their friends. And the teachers just taught their lessons, collected their salaries, and went home to pray that nothing happened to them on school premises. Until the day the NYSC posted a new corps member to Wahala Grammar School. His name was Emeka. He came from Enugu. He was 24 years old, fresh from university, full of hope and the belief that teaching was a noble thing. He wore his khaki uniform like a soldier, pressed and neat. He smiled easily. He liked to make jokes in class. He did not know what Wahala Grammar School was. Nobody told him. The other teachers watched him walk in on his first Monday with the kind of quiet sadness you feel when you see someone stepping into a trap. By his second week, Emeka had already started making enemies. He confiscated a cigarette from a boy in SS2. He sent Scorpion out of class for refusing to sit down. Small things that in any normal school would mean nothing. But this was not a normal school. The Friday that changed everything came 3 weeks after Emeka arrived. It was a hot afternoon. The sun was pressing down on the zinc rooftops of Wahala Grammar School like a punishment. Emeka was teaching English language in SS2B. The class was noisy as usual, students talking, laughing, some of them playing music from their phones. In the back of the class sat a girl named Ronke. She was Scorpion's girlfriend, or at least she was Scorpion's property, because love was not the word for what Scorpion felt for anything. Ronke was doing her nails in class, as she always did. Music was playing from her phone, loud enough to compete with Emeka's voice. Emeka asked her to stop twice. She ignored him twice. On the third time, Emeka walked to the back, picked up her phone, and switched off the music. What happened next, nobody in that classroom ever forgot. Ronke stood up. She was not afraid. She had never been afraid of any teacher in her life, and she was not about to start today. She looked Emeka directly in the eyes and said, slowly, clearly, so that every student in the class could hear,
"Uncle, you will see what I will do to you."
She said it the way you say a promise, the way you say a fact, not like a threat, but like information she was kindly sharing with him. The class went silent. Even the students who were sleeping woke up. Emeka stood there for a moment. He was young, he was angry, and he made a mistake. He raised his hand and slapped Ronke across the face. The sound of that slap echoed in the classroom like a gunshot. Then silence. Ronke touched her cheek. She did not cry. She sat back down slowly and said nothing more. Emeka collected her phone and walked back to the front of the class with shaking hands. That was a Friday. By Sunday evening, Emeka was dead. Nobody knew exactly what happened. The official story was that he had an accident on his way home. But the people who lived near the staff quarters said they heard sounds in the night. Students whispered in corners on Monday morning, their faces tight with something between excitement and fear. The kind of fear that comes not from not knowing, but from knowing too much. The school was quiet that Monday in a different way than usual. Even Blade, Scorpion, and Terror were quieter. Not sad, just settled, like people who had done what needed to be done. The news spread through the state. A corps member posted to Wahala Grammar School in Oyo State had died over the weekend. The NYSC office sent their condolences, and then they sent a replacement. Her name on the posting letter was Miss Fasola. She arrived on a Tuesday morning. She wore her khaki uniform and a white headscarf. She carried nothing but a small bag and a piece of chalk. The other teachers whispered when they saw her name. Fasola, the same name as the physics teacher who had been beaten 2 years ago. A coincidence? Nobody said it out loud, but they noticed. Miss Adunola walked into her first class, SS2B, the same class where Ronke had made her promise to Emeka, without any fear on her face. She stood at the board and wrote her name. She looked at the students with quiet eyes. The students looked back at her the way lions look at something small that has wandered into their territory. Scorpion was in that class. He leaned back in his chair with his sunglasses on and said loud enough for everyone to hear, "Another one." Some students laughed. Miss Adunola did not blink. She said, "Open your books to page 47. And something strange happened. Students opened their books. Not all of them, not immediately, but one by one, the silence that followed her voice was different from the silence that followed fear. It was heavier. It sat on the chest like something you couldn't name. Scorpion laughed again. "Madam, do you know where you are?" She looked at him. Just looked. And Scorpion, who had never looked away from anyone in his life, looked away first. He would tell no one about this. The weeks that followed were strange. Miss Adunola taught her classes. She never shouted, she never begged, she never threatened. She simply taught. And something about the way she moved through the school made people uncomfortable in ways they couldn't explain. Strange things began to happen. Small things. A student who had been laughing at her in the corridor slipped and fell, even though the ground was dry. Another one who had drawn something rude on the board before her class came in couldn't lift his hand properly for 2 days. Students began to avoid the side of the corridor she walked on. But the council didn't notice. Or they noticed and didn't care. To them, she was just another teacher. Small, replaceable. The day it all broke open was a Wednesday. It started in the middle of Miss Adunola's class. Blade had been sleeping in the back of the class for the past 20 minutes. Scorpion and Terror sat beside him, passing a phone between them, watching a video with the volume low. They were not hiding it. They never hid anything. Miss Adunola stopped writing on the board. She turned around and looked at the three of them. Blade, Scorpion, Terror, stand up. The class held its breath. The three boys looked at each other. Then they smiled. This was new. Nobody called them by those names to their faces except people who wanted trouble. Madam, you dey craze? Terror said. Miss Adunola said nothing. She just waited. That was when something flipped inside Blade. Maybe it was the waiting. Maybe it was her stillness. Maybe it was that she had looked at him the same way she had looked at Scorpion that first day. That way that made you feel small without her doing anything. Blade stood up. He walked to the front of the class. He grabbed the chalk from her hand and threw it on the floor. Then he pushed her. She stumbled. She hit the board with her shoulder. The class watched in total silence. Scorpion was behind Blade now. Terror too. The three of them stood in front of her, and what they did next, the hitting, the shouting, the chaos lasted less than 2 minutes. When it was over, Miss Adunola was on the floor. She looked up at them. Her headscarf had fallen. Her face was calm. Not the calm of someone who had accepted defeat, but the calm of someone who had just received exactly what they had come for. She said one sentence. Her voice was quiet and very clear. You have given me what I needed. Nobody understood what that meant. Not then. The three boys laughed and walked out of the class. Blade woke up at 2 a.m. His right hand was burning. He turned on his phone torch and looked at it. It was swollen. Not cut, not stung, just swollen, big, round, tight, like something was growing inside it. He pressed it and shouted from the pain. By morning, it was worse. He couldn't move his fingers. The skin was stretched and shiny and hot.
What happened to
His
your
mother
hand?
screamed when she saw it. At the same time, across town, Scorpion's mother was looking at her son's hands with her mouth open. Both hands, both swollen. He was crying, and Scorpion had not cried since he was 7 years old. Terror's uncle, the police officer, was driving his nephew to the hospital before 7 a.m. Terror howling in the backseat, both arms swollen from elbow to fingertip. Back at Wahala Grammar School, the news spread before first period, but that was not the strangest part. The strangest part was what was happening to the other students. In SS2B alone, 4 students woke up with scratches on their backs that nobody had touched. A girl who had laughed the loudest when Miss Adunola fell woke up and couldn't stop shaking. A boy who had filmed the assault on his phone discovered that the video on his phone was just black, but that in the night he had dreamed of something watching him from the corner of his room. By the time students arrived at school that Wednesday morning, the whole campus was buzzing with something that wasn't excitement. It was dread. Students were walking fast, looking over their shoulders. Someone in SS1 said that the night before, she had felt invisible hands slapping her cheeks repeatedly as she sat at her reading table. She showed the red marks on her face. Nobody laughed. A JSS2 boy who had once poured water on a teacher's chair, not even connected to Miss Adunola's beating, found that his mouth had locked. He could not open it fully. He was communicating by writing on paper, tears streaming down his face. By the second day, the parents of the 3 boys had pulled them from the hospital. The hospital had no answers. The doctors ran tests. They took x-rays. They looked at blood results. Nothing explained what was happening to those hands. They kept swelling. The pain was getting worse. The boys could not eat. They could not sleep. They screamed through the night. Blade's mother was a strong woman, the kind who didn't believe in what she called village nonsense. But by Thursday, she was sitting in an herbalist compound outside Ibadan, holding her son's swollen hands, listening to an old man throw shells on the ground. The herbalist looked at the shells. Then he looked at Blade. Then he looked at the mother. He said, "Your son has touched what he was not supposed to touch. He has beaten someone he should not have beaten." The mother asked, "Who?" The herbalist shook his head slowly. "The person is not fully of this world." Scorpion's father, a loud, connected man who knew senators, heard this story secondhand and dismissed it. He went instead to his pastor. The pastor prayed for 6 hours straight. Scorpion's hands did not reduce. On Friday, Terror's uncle drove back to Wahala Grammar School with Terror wrapped in the backseat, whimpering. They came to find Miss Adunola, but Miss Adunola was gone. The staff room had no record of her reporting that morning. Her file in the admin office, her NYSC posting letter, her passport photograph, her contact details were all there, but the photograph was strange. Teachers who looked at it found that they couldn't quite describe her face after they looked away, like trying to remember a dream. The NYSC office in Ibadan said they had no record of posting anyone named Adunola Fasola to Wahala Grammar School. Someone, nobody remembered who, went to check the school's older files. The files from 2 years ago. They found a name. Mr. Ade Fasola, physics teacher, transferred after an assault by students. The file had a handwritten note at the bottom in pencil, almost faded. Prognosis uncertain. Next of kin notified. Next of kin. One of the office workers, with shaking hands, found the emergency contact number listed in the file. She dialed it. A woman picked up. The office worker asked if she knew Mr. Ade Fasola. The woman on the phone began to cry. She said,
"He died 8 months ago. He never recovered fully from what they did to him. I am his sister, Adunola."
"My name is Adunola." The school went completely silent when this information spread. Not the silence of a school following rules, the silence of people who have just understood something terrible and true. The office worker stood holding the phone long after the call ended. Her hand was shaking. She played the conversation back in her head. The woman on the phone, the real Adunola, had said her brother died 8 months ago. But Miss Adunola had been walking these corridors for weeks, teaching in SS2B, writing on the board, looking at students with those quiet eyes. How? She went back to the file. She stared at the passport photograph of Mr. Ade Fasola, the physics teacher. A man, tall, dark, serious face. Then she went to the admin record where Miss Adunola had signed in on her first day. She compared the signatures. Her breath stopped. They were the same. Not similar, the same. Same slant, same pressure, same way the letter F curved at the beginning of Fasola, written by the same hand. A man's hand and a woman's hand, the same. One of the older teachers, a woman named Mrs. Ogundimu, who had been at Wahala Grammar School for 19 years and had seen many things, sat down when she heard all of this. She was quiet for a long time. Then she said something that nobody forgot. She said, when someone dies with unfinished business, especially someone who was wronged badly and died in pain, sometimes they cannot cross. They stay.
He did not come back as himself. He came back through his sister. He wore her face, her name, her body like a costume. The real Adunola is in her house right now, alive and well.
Nobody spoke. Mrs. Ogundimu continued.
And she does not even know her brother used her to come back here. She does not know that for these past weeks, something wearing her face has been standing in front of a classroom in Oyo State.
The room was so silent, you could hear the ceiling fan cutting the air above them.
He came back to collect what was owed to him.
Someone asked the question that everyone was thinking.
So when the real sister picked up the phone just now,
where did the one that was here go? Mrs. Ogundimu looked at the empty chair in the staff room, the one that was still warm. She said, he got what he came for. He has gone back. And that was the last time anyone at Wahala Grammar School spoke about Miss Adunola out loud. Some things, once you understand them fully, you do not discuss again. You simply carry them quietly for the rest of your life. Blade died on a Saturday. His hands spread, the swelling crawled up his arms to his shoulders and then to his chest. Doctors could not explain it. His mother was in the hospital corridor screaming when it happened. Terror lasted 2 more days. He died on a Monday. His uncle, the police officer, sat outside the morgue and did not speak for a long time. Scorpion was the last. Before he died, he said something that his mother repeated to everyone who would listen for years afterward. He said he could see her, standing in the corner of his hospital room, small woman, white headscarf, looking at him with quiet eyes. Not angry, just waiting. The other students, those who had participated, who had laughed, who had filmed, who had encouraged, they did not all die, but none of them walked away without a mark. Some lost their minds entirely. They were found wandering, talking to people nobody else could see. Their parents took them to hospitals, to churches, to herbalists, and some improved and some did not. Others became what the town called imbeciles. Not mad, but emptied, like something had reached inside them and taken out a piece. They sat and stared. They stopped recognizing family members. They were young people living in old people's bodies. A few ran. They left Oyo State entirely. Years later, some of them still couldn't sleep without the lights on. The students who survived, truly survived, without marks, without madness, without loss, were the ones who had kept themselves quiet. Not quiet out of fear, quiet out of decency. The ones who had not laughed, the ones who had looked away in shame rather than in entertainment. The ones who, when Miss Adunola had fallen to the floor, had felt sick in their stomachs. They went home and they were fine. They grew up and they remembered. They told this story for the rest of their lives, at night, in low voices, to people who needed to understand that the world keeps record of what we do to the innocent. Wahala Grammar School still stands in Oyo State. They say after what happened, even the walls of the school felt different. Teachers were transferred in and transferred out, but nobody stayed long. Students became quieter. Guns disappeared from school bags. The boy who used to collect tribute stopped collecting. Some people say it was just a coincidence. 3 boys with a strange disease, stress-induced reactions, the power of rumor in a superstitious town. Lesson 1. What you do to others will always find its way back to you. Lesson 2. No power lasts forever. Evil may seem to win today, but justice, whether from man, from God, or from forces beyond our understanding, never sleeps. Lesson 3. Some doors, once opened, cannot be closed again, and some people, once wronged, do not stay gone. Lesson 4. Power built on fear is the most fragile power in the world. Lesson 5. Privilege and connection cannot save you from the consequences of your own wickedness. Lesson 6. The innocent do not always look like what you expect. Lesson 7. Silence and indifference make you part of the problem. Lesson 8. Train up a child in the way he should go.
Learn how to make AI videos like this one for just a small fee. Send a WhatsApp message to the number displayed on your screen. See you in class.